Gunshots ripped through the marble walls. Flames roared, devouring the mansion that had once been my family's fortress. I ran, desperate. And then the door burst open. A figure emerged through the smoke, tall, commanding, eyes as cold as ice, a rough hand dragging me out of the inferno. Kalen Thorne, the most dangerous man I had ever met. He said he would protect me. He fought for me, shielded me from death. But his protection didn't feel like a gift. It felt like an invisible chain. Because every glance, every word carried the same unshakable claim. You are mine, Eleanor. I was torn between two fires, the terror of his brutality and secrets, and the irresistible pull of the man who broke every rule just to keep me by his side. Was he my savior or my destroyer? I didn't know. All I knew was that from that moment on, I was trapped in a dark love, a love with no escape. My life, Eleanor Vance's life, had always been a meticulously staged spectacle of luxury on a platform built of lies. My family. They were not what they pretended to be. My father, a successful businessman with a friendly smile on the covers of finance magazines, was in reality an architect of dark deals, building his empire on a foundation of secrecy and underworld violence. My mother, the elegant woman who always hosted glamorous charity galas, was in fact the silent manager of that complex network. Her eyes held the coldness of someone who had witnessed too many terrible things. I grew up amidst silk and riches, but was also surrounded by a sense of suffocation, as if the air around me was constantly thick with the smell of undetonated gunpowder. That night, everything shattered. I was in my familiar study, lost in the pages of an old book, trying to find some sort of fake peace. Outside, the sounds of luxury cars steadily rolling towards the mansion signaled another social gathering was about to begin. But this time, there was no gentle jazz music or the delicate clinking of crystal glasses. Instead, there was a deadly silence, followed by the sound of gunfire. The first shot, cold and decisive, pierced the thick wall as if it tore through my chest. Then came screams, the sounds of smashing glass, and the chaotic, hurried pounding of feet. A raw, chilling fear ran down my spine. I knew, with a dark instinct I had always tried to bury, that this day would eventually come. My family had sown the wind. Now they had to reap the whirlwind. But I was just a girl trapped in that storm. I huddled under the mahogany desk, my heart pounding as if it wanted to leap out of my chest. The gunfire grew closer. Heavy boot steps trod on the velvet carpet, and the acrid smell of gunpowder smoke began to diffuse into the air. The study door burst open, not by hand, but with an extremely powerful kick. A tall figure appeared in the doorway, just a black silhouette against the streetlights reflecting through the window. I couldn't clearly see his face, only the cold glint of metal flashing in his hand. Or his grasp. I tightly squeezed my eyes shut, awaiting the inevitable end. But there was no gunshot. Instead, a strong, rough, yet strangely steady hand grabbed my arm. I flinched and opened my eyes, and for the first time, I saw him. Kalen Thorne. He stood towering in the dim light, an image in complete contrast to the chaos around him. His ink-black hair was slightly messy over his forehead. His eyes were sharp as ice but concealed a profound, mysterious intensity. He wore a black leather jacket, clinging to his powerful, sturdy physique, and an unmistakable automatic pistol was neatly holstered at his hip. I had never seen a man who was simultaneously so terrifying and so captivating. Danger enveloped him like a dark aura, but in that moment, I only felt one thing. Protection. Go. His voice was low and gravelly, a command that could not be refused. He didn't ask. He didn't wait. It was just one word, but it contained all the authority and decisiveness of a man accustomed to being in control. He pulled me up. My body trembled, limp as a rag doll. I didn't resist. I was helpless. In that moment, I only wanted to escape this nightmare, and he was the only way out. I stumbled after him, through corridors drenched in rubble and the metallic smell of blood. Every step was sheer horror, but the presence of that man felt like an invisible shield. He moved swiftly, resolutely, his eyes constantly scanning every corner like a skilled predator. He said nothing. He didn't look back at me. He simply dragged me along, forcefully and without hesitation. I didn't know who he was, why he was here, or what he wanted. But as he led me out of that burning hell, I knew I had been drawn into something bigger, something more dangerous than anything I had ever known. He pushed me into a glossy black car. The engine was already running. It was not my family's car, or anyone's I knew. The car sped into the night, leaving the distant wail of sirens and the fiery red glow of the raging mansion blaze behind. I looked through the rearview mirror. The familiar scene was now just a pile of rubble, engulfed in flames. My family. Where were they? Were they safe? A pang of pain constricted my chest, but I couldn't cry. I was too afraid, too stunned. The man beside me, Kalen, remained silent. He drove skillfully through the city's deserted streets. The streetlights flashed across his sharp, angular face, creating shifting shadows. I tried to find an explanation, a comforting word, but he was a wall of silence. I felt small and powerless before the mystery and authority emanating from him. Who was he? A bodyguard? An enemy? Or a savior? He took me to a lavish penthouse, perched atop a glass skyscraper. The apartment was vast, furnished with minimalist but extremely expensive decor, with a panoramic view of the city glittering with lights. It was a place of luxury and splendor, but it also brought a chilling sense of coldness and loneliness. It felt like a golden cage, designed to hold a rare bird. And I knew I was that bird. Sit down. Kalen's voice was still low and gravelly, but this time it held a hint of underlying fatigue. He poured me a glass of water, placing it on the coffee table in front of me. I looked at the water, then up at his face. His eyes were still cold, but without the haste and urgency of the chaos. Now, it was just the two of us, in the heavy silence of the night. Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked at me for a long time, as if considering something. I am the one who saved you. A blunt answer, but it revealed nothing. I was grateful, yet terrified. His protection came too suddenly, too fiercely, as if he had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He seemed to know a lot about me, about my family, but I knew nothing about him. That worried me. My family. What happened to them? Kalen turned his back, walking toward the large window, looking out at the city lights. His figure was imposing, terrifyingly authoritative. They got involved in things they shouldn't have, Eleanor. And now, the consequences have arrived. Consequences. But who? Why us? He sighed, a low sound cutting through the air. I can't tell you everything right now. You are not safe. I will protect you. He said protect you, but the words didn't bring the warmth of a promise. It sounded more like a declaration of ownership, an assertion that I now belonged to him, under his control. I looked at the powerful hands of that man, the man who had pulled me out of hell, who stood tall like a god of the night in this cold room. I was grateful to him, but also trembled before the potential power within him. He was my only refuge, but at the same time, he was a terrifying mystery I could not fathom. That night, I lay on the soft bed in Kalen's luxurious room, but couldn't close my eyes. Every small noise made me jump. I felt like I was caught up in a game whose rules I didn't understand, and Kalen was the one controlling it. He saved me, but what was the exchange? I couldn't stop thinking about those cold eyes, the frightening silence, and the absolute power that radiated from his every gesture. I didn't know if he was a hero or a kidnapper. I didn't know if his salvation was a gift or a trap. And I wondered, was that a promise? Or a sentence? The following days passed in a blurry state, as if I were living in a dream. Or a meticulously orchestrated nightmare. Kalen's penthouse was both a secure fortress and a prison of gold. He didn't lock me up with chains, but his presence, his watchful eyes, and the lack of outside information created an invisible wall that suffocated me. I spent most of my time wandering the vast apartment, trying to piece together the identity of the man who saved me. Kalen was not an open person. He lived a life that was terrifyingly organized. Every item had its place. Every book was arranged in a specific order. I found books on international law, on the underground economy, on military techniques, all foreign and frightening to the world I once knew. They were small pieces about a man whose whole picture I could never truly grasp. He always wore dark, tailored clothes, leaning towards a military style, highlighting his strong, muscular physique. When he moved, it was a combination of brute strength and the fluidity of a predator. I often caught him standing by the window, looking down at the distant city, his face etched with deep contemplation. In those moments, he looked so lonely, like a cursed king on his throne. Our meals were conducted in silence. Kalen didn't talk much, but when he spoke, it was always blunt, sharp questions. What do you know about your father's dealings? Who were the people who frequently visited the mansion but weren't on the official guest list? Did your father hide anything special, something only you or your mother knew? Initially, I denied, even raged. My family didn't do anything wrong, I yelled, though deep down, I knew I was lying. My father is a respected man. Kalen just looked at me with emotionless eyes. Your innocence is admirable, Eleanor, but it won't save you. After each time he questioned me, I questioned myself. Memories began to flood back. My father's secret late-night phone calls, the strange guests visiting the mansion with locked leather briefcases, the unmarked cars parked outside the gate. I had tried to ignore them, tried to believe they were just complicated business matters of my father's. But now, under Kalen's scrutinizing gaze, the veil over my eyes began to collapse. I discovered a skill of mine that Kalen seemed to have vaguely realized. Since childhood, I had an excellent photographic memory, especially for numbers and codes. My father, during drunken moments, would sometimes mumble about the ciphers he used to secure information. And I, during sleepless nights, had unconsciously memorized those jumbled sequences of numbers. Kalen discovered this when I accidentally mentioned a time I helped my father decode a corrupted document, not knowing what the document was. You can decode a complex data string just by looking at it? Kalen asked, a strange gleam sparking in his eyes. Like sequences of numbers that mean nothing to an ordinary person, but for you, they form a logical structure? I nodded, confused. Yes. Sometimes. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. Kalen smirked, a rare smile that felt colder than friendly. Interesting. Very interesting. From then on, he started bringing back documents, USB drives filled with numbers, complex characters. They were financial records, encrypted transaction logs, intricate network maps. He sat beside me, sometimes just silently observing, sometimes guiding me with professional terminology I had never heard of. Look for signs of illegal transactions, any anomalies in the cash flow, or names that repeat in offshore accounts. I immersed myself in the work, unconsciously. My brain worked relentlessly, connecting the pieces, organizing the numbers. Every time I found something, a connection, a critical clue, Kalen looked at me with satisfaction, as if he had just found an expensive new toy. I was his partner, not entirely a prisoner. But this cooperation only pulled me deeper into his world, and the dark world of my family. In the intense moments of work, Kalen sometimes showed an unexpected tenderness. One night, when I was too focused on the computer screen to eat, he suddenly placed a bowl of hot soup in front of me. Eat, Eleanor. You can't work on an empty stomach. His voice was still low and gravelly, but no longer as cold as before. Another time, when I shivered unexpectedly from the cold, he silently placed a soft blanket over my shoulders. That small gesture, in the context of this chaotic and mysterious life, became profoundly meaningful. It confused me. It made me despise myself. How could I feel warm from a man I didn't truly trust? A man who might be the destroyer of my family? In those moments, my heart was torn. I was attracted to the strength and protection Kalen provided. He was my only safe haven in a world that was collapsing. But at the same time, I felt disgust towards myself for that attraction. My family, regardless of what they did, they were still my flesh and blood. And this man, he was exposing all their sins, little by little. One evening, as I was struggling to decode an extremely complex data file, Kalen sat across from me, watching intently. I felt his gaze like sharp needles, piercing into my soul. Your father. He was an intelligent man, he said, breaking the silence. But he made a mistake. He crossed a line that no one should cross. What line? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me, his cold eyes suddenly flaring with a hint of pain. Don't get involved with innocent lives. Especially children. Those words sent a shiver down my spine. I had never considered that my father's activities could be so terrible. It was a scar, an obsession in Kalen's soul that I had never known. He seemed particularly sensitive to vulnerable victims, people unable to protect themselves. That made me wonder, what in his past made him carry that obsession? Could it be that very obsession that drove him to act, to become an undercover agent, infiltrating the underworld to punish those who committed such crimes? Small pieces of Kalen gradually emerged, but they only made him more mysterious. He was a man of rules, moral principles he never broke. Unless it was for me. I had noticed that. He frequently checked his phone, having short calls in a coded language I didn't understand. But he always prioritized my safety above all else. When there were signs of danger outside, he would immediately take me to another location, or increase the security of the apartment. One night, I accidentally overheard a fragment of his phone conversation. His voice was low and gravelly, but full of authority. I know, but the priority target is her safety. Nothing is allowed to happen to her. There was a sound of someone on the other end objecting, but Kalen cut them off with an icy voice. I'm not asking for an opinion. That's an order. I knew he was breaking some important rule in his world for me. That made me feel both afraid and loved. A twisted, dark kind of love, but undeniable. One afternoon, as I was decoding a complex plan for money laundering through charity funds, I suddenly saw Kalen standing behind me. He placed his hand on my shoulder, a light touch that still made my whole body jump. You did very well, Eleanor, his voice whispered in my ear. His warm breath on my neck sent a shiver through me. Thanks to you, we are closer to exposing everything. I turned to look at him, his eyes deep as a bottomless abyss. In that moment, I saw admiration, possessiveness, and a dark emotion I couldn't name. It terrified me, but it also made my heart skip a beat uncontrollably. He leaned down, his hair brushing mine, his masculine scent enveloping me. I will protect you, Eleanor, he whispered. I will not let anyone harm you. No one. That promise not only guaranteed safety, but was also an invisible chain binding me to him forever. That gaze, that promise, was both tender protection and an undeniable assertion of ownership. It made me wonder if I was stepping into a trap even greater than the one my family had created. A love trap, woven from secrets and power. Kalen's security wall, which I had absolute faith in, eventually collapsed. It was a pouring afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, trying to chase away the heavy thoughts about my family and the terrifying secrets I had uncovered. Kalen had gone out on a mission. He said it was an important meeting to deal with the consequences of the information I had helped him decode. I was left alone in the vast apartment, feeling more isolated than ever. Suddenly, the silent security system of the apartment flickered a dim red light, a sign Kalen had told me meant intrusion. My heart clenched, pounding relentlessly. Who? How was this possible? This apartment was a fortress. I rushed to the security monitor, my hands trembling. On the screen, I saw dark figures moving in the corridor outside the apartment. They were not strangers. Familiar silhouettes of the bodyguards who used to work for my father, the cold faces I had seen at social parties. They had come for me. Utter fear enveloped me. I no longer had Kaylin here to protect me. I was alone, facing the people my family had hired to do what? To silence me, perhaps? The apartment's bulletproof door began to shake violently under heavy blows. The sound of clashing metal and shattering glass echoed throughout the apartment. I curled up, tears streaming down my face. I wanted to call Kaylin, wanted him to return, but my phone... It was dead. I was a victim, completely helpless. Just when I thought everything was over, a louder explosion came from the balcony window. A cold gust of wind rushed into the room, followed by a familiar, towering figure emerging through the rain. Kaylin. He appeared like a god of the night, a whirlwind of destruction. His eyes burned in the darkness, not with fear, but with a fierce fury. He did not utter a word. He only acted. With a decisive gesture, the gun in his hand fired. The loud crack of the gun ripped through the air, followed by the thud of a man outside the window falling. Kaylin spun around, moving like lightning. He did not hesitate, showed no mercy. He was a perfect fighting machine, tempered through countless battles. Every strike, every shot was precise, lethal. I had never seen him so brutal, so cold. This was not the man who had gently placed a blanket over me, or brought me soup. This was a demon, a dangerous predator, born to destroy. In that moment of chaos, while the intruders were still struggling to get through the broken door, I accidentally saw something. A phone belonging to one of the men Kaylin had taken down, lying on the floor. The phone screen was still lit, displaying an unsent text message. Target identified. Eleanor Vance is in. And below that text was a photo of me, taken from outside the apartment, through the window frame. But what truly stunned me was not the photo. It was the message below. Eliminate everyone, including the girl. And the sender was a code I had once decoded for Kaylin. It was the code of a high-ranking figure in the organization Kaylin was working for. It couldn't be. I backed away, hitting the cold wall. I looked at Kaylin, who was fighting fiercely with the attackers, his face cold and resolute. The goal was to eliminate everyone, including the girl. So he was assigned to execute my family. All of them. And I was also on that list. That truth was like a freezing dagger, severing every thread of affection I had foolishly woven. Kaylin. He wasn't my savior. He was part of the plan to destroy my family. He was an undercover agent, and he was tasked to eliminate all the people I loved, his protection, his unexpected tenderness. Was it all just an act? Or had he changed? I stood there, dazed, as Kaylin finished the battle. The intruders were mercilessly taken down, lying scattered on the floor. Bright red blood stained the pristine white rug. The smell of gunpowder and the metallic scent of blood stung my nostrils, but I no longer felt fear. Instead, there was an extreme emptiness. Kaylin turned to look at me, his face smeared with a few streaks of blood. He looked savage, terrifying, but his eyes flared with a flicker of worry when he saw me. He walked towards me, his blood-stained boots crunching on broken glass. "Eleanor," his voice was low and gravelly, like a beast's growl. "Are you okay?" He reached out to touch me, but I stepped back, my eyes full of revulsion. Who are you?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "What was your mission?" Kaylin stopped, his hand suspended in midair. His eyes shifted, from worry to something darker, more dangerous. He knew. He knew I had found out. He stepped closer, every stride decisive, authoritative. He was not a mere man. He was a hunter, and I was his prey. "I saved you," he said, his voice cold as ice. "I kept you safe." "Safe for what?" I almost screamed. "So you could complete your mission? The mission to execute my family? All of them?" Kalen said nothing, but his silence confirmed everything. My tears streamed out, not from fear, but from the ultimate betrayal. I had trusted him. I had felt safe with him. I had loved him. And he was my destroyer. Kalen advanced, his powerful hand gripping my chin, tilting my face up to force me to face him. His eyes no longer held fake tenderness. Now, they were pure possessiveness, cold and deadly. "Eleanor," he said, his voice low and gravelly, echoing in the room filled with the smell of blood and death. "Your family paid the price for their sins. That is part of justice. I cannot change that." "Then what about me?" I asked, my voice choked. "Am I also part of that justice? Will you execute me too?" Kalen's eyes narrowed, a dangerous spark flashing. "No, you are not like them. You are mine, Eleanor." He leaned down, his lips finding mine in a brutal, violent kiss. It was not a kiss of love, but a kiss of conquest, of power. I resisted, hitting his chest, but he was too strong. He held me tightly, as if wanting to crush me against his massive body. "You are mine," he whispered into my ear, between desperate kisses. "No matter how much you hate me, no matter where you try to run, you are still mine. I won't let anyone touch you. No one." That declaration, amidst the blood and death, made me realize a horrifying truth. His love was not a salvation, but a curse. He would protect me, keep me by his side, but in return, I would forever be his hostage, the hostage of this dark, twisted love. That truth was like a gaping wound in my chest. I loved him, but he was my destroyer. A love built on betrayal, on a foundation of blood and tears. It was a forbidden love, a love I knew would never have a happy ending. I was trapped, between love and hatred, between life and death. And I didn't know what I would choose. After that fateful night, the penthouse was no longer a safe haven. It was a psychological battlefield, where Kalen and I existed in an atmosphere thick with tension and betrayal. I hated him. I resented his deception, but I also couldn't deny that, in that moment close to death, he had protected me. The truth about his mission, about him being assigned to execute my family, was like a giant iceberg between us, cold and insurmountable. I tried to escape. Many times. I tried to open the door, find a way to call, look for every loophole in his security system. But Kalen, that man, seemed to anticipate my every move. He never truly locked me up, but his presence, his eyes following my every gesture, and his implicit warnings were enough for me to understand that all efforts were futile. He would not let me go. Never. "You're wasting your time, Eleanor," Kalen said, his voice low and gravelly, sometimes like a whisper in the night. He often appeared abruptly, standing behind me when I was looking out the window, or when I was trying to find an exit. "The world outside is now more dangerous to you than I am." "More dangerous than you?" I scoffed, my voice full of bitterness. "You were the one assigned to execute my family. Who are you to talk about danger?" Kalen sighed, a heavy sound. "Your family created enemies you can't imagine. I infiltrated to solve that problem. My mission was to eliminate the threat. I didn't want you to become an innocent casualty." "Innocent?" I turned, looking straight into his cold eyes. "What about those who died because of your mission? Were they innocent?" A fleeting flash of pain crossed that man's eyes, so fast I wondered if I had imagined it. I cannot change the past, Eleanor, but I can protect your future. What is that? I asked. An empty promise? Or another threat? Conflict within me grew larger. On one hand, I wanted to hate him to my core. He was the betrayer, the one who ruined my life. On the other hand, I couldn't deny that, under his protection, I was genuinely safe. I despised myself for still being attracted to him, for being drawn to his strength and darkness. It made me feel so inferior, so weak. Kalen was not entirely cold, either, as I had thought. There were moments when he seemed to expose his vulnerable human side, especially when he looked at me. There was an obsession, an anguish in those eyes. He didn't talk much about his past, but I had pieced together a few details. He had a past tied to loss, to abused women and children he couldn't save. That created the core motivation for his absolute protection, an almost fanatical protection. What did you see, Kalen? I asked him once, when we were sitting across from each other, in the heavy silence. What made you the way you are? The man took a sip of black coffee. What I saw was pain no one should have to bear. Children stripped of their childhood, women turned into tools. Your family, they were part of that network. They traded in innocence. They made money from blood and tears. His words were like a dagger thrust into my heart. I couldn't believe my family could do such horrible things. But recalling the documents I had decoded, the numbers, the names, a cold horror enveloped me. Was he telling the truth? In another instance, when I tried to defy him, Kalen suddenly pushed me against the wall, his eyes blazing. Don't try to defy me, Eleanor. I don't know what will happen to you if you fall into the hands of your family's other enemies. They have no rules. They have no conscience. I at least have limits. It was a threat, but also a strange confession. He still had a conscience. He wasn't a complete demon. Or at least, he wasn't a demon to me. The final threat came unexpectedly, again. The remaining enemies of my family, or those affected by the collapse of my father's empire, had found us. This time, they didn't just attack the apartment. They staged an ambush when Kalen took me out to move to a safer location. We were driving on a deserted street when a truck swerved out from an alley, blocking our way. Kalen reacted immediately. He pushed me down into the back seat, drawing his gun. Stay down. Kalen's car door was shot to pieces. Gunshots roared. He fought like a madman, not for a mission, but for me. I saw him rush into the hail of bullets, without hesitation. A bullet grazed his shoulder, tearing his jacket and leaving a bright red streak of blood. He gritted his teeth but did not back down. He retaliated with a terrifying brutality, taking down each enemy one by one. Kalen fought with unbelievable ferocity, blood from his shoulder soaking his shirt. His face was covered in dust and blood, but his eyes remained steadfast, focused only on protecting me. He was not a traditional hero. He was a dark hero, a man willing to stain his hands with blood to protect what he believed was his. And I was his. I witnessed him getting injured, witnessed the fatigue etched on his face, but he didn't stop. He fought for me to live, to be safe. This romanticization of violence was terrifying, but also utterly captivating. It made me realize that no matter how dark his past was, no matter how horrifying his undercover mission was, his love for me was real. It was a love stronger than fear, stronger than betrayal. When the battle ended, the street was strewn with bodies and wreckage. Kalen stood there, panting, one hand clutching his injured shoulder, the other still holding the gun tightly. He looked at me, his eyes both tired and fulfilled. I told you, Eleanor. His voice was hoarse, weak. I will protect you, at all costs. I crawled out of the car, running to him. I placed my hand on the bleeding wound on his shoulder. He did not resist, just looked at me. In that pool of blood, I saw a twisted, dark love. but undeniable. It was the love that I, somehow, had learned to fear and crave. I feared its brutality, feared the secrets hidden within it. But I also craved the safety it provided, craved belonging to this dark man, who sacrificed everything for me. I didn't know if this love was my ultimate salvation, or a trap even greater than what I had experienced. But I knew that, in that moment, I didn't want to leave him. Kalen survived that battle, but the injury to his shoulder was severe, coupled with old wounds and exhaustion from months of hiding in the underworld. He had completed his mission, my family had been overthrown, and the remaining enemies were also eliminated. The underworld had been purged, but the cost was too high. And he, that man, paid the price with his body and soul. We returned to the penthouse, now repaired, but the atmosphere remained heavy. Kalen lay on the bed, weak and pale. His eyes, which were always sharp, now held a strange tiredness, a peculiar gentleness. I sat beside him, holding his rough hand, the hand that had killed, the hand that had protected me. I broke every rule for you, Eleanor. His voice was a whisper, barely audible. My mission was to eliminate everyone, leave no trace. But I couldn't do that to you. My tears fell onto his hand, hot. Why? Kalen smiled faintly, a weak smile full of love and regret. I saw the fear in your eyes, Eleanor. The fear I had seen in the eyes of other innocent people. You are not like them. You are my conscience. I couldn't destroy my own conscience. He confessed everything. The initial mission, the betrayal, and how he struggled with his own conscience when he started to love me. He chose me, chose my life, instead of completing the mission entirely. He broke his vow, went against his organization, all for me. I know. I can't live a normal life, Eleanor, Kalen said, breathing heavily. My world. It's too dark. But you deserve the light. He closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his temple. I squeezed his hand, my heart aching. I knew he was saying goodbye. He chose to sacrifice himself to atone, to give me a life I never thought I could have, a life free from darkness, free from fear. The sun began to set, the fiery red twilight shining into the room, staining his pale face. A distant church bell chimed, like a final lullaby. Kalen opened his eyes. They sparkled like the last stars in the night. Live. Well, Eleanor, he whispered, the weak smile still on his lips. Find the happiness I couldn't give you. You. You deserve to be loved. He raised his hand, gently stroking my cheek, his final gesture of tenderness. His breath weakened, then stopped. His hand went cold in mine. Kalen was gone, peaceful as a falling leaf. He chose death, not because he was afraid, but because he wanted me to live. His death was the ultimate atonement, the way he paid for his sins, and also the way he secured happiness for the one who remained, for me. He left me a future, a life no longer bound by the darkness of my family or his own. Years later, I rebuilt my life. I left the city, moved to a peaceful countryside, where there were endless fields of lavender and the chirping of birds every morning. I was no longer the Eleanor Vance of the past, the weak girl trapped in a world of sin. I had become a stronger, more mature woman, but still carried the scar of a dark love. I have a daughter, named Clara. She has my green eyes, but inherited the calmness and resilience of her father. Every time I watch Clara run in the field, her brown hair flying in the wind, I remember Kalen. She is the seed for the future, the symbol of his sacrifice, showing that his love was not meaningless. Kalen did not have a happily ever after in the fairy tale sense, but he sacrificed himself to grant that happiness to me and to the next generation. I still remember him, remember the man who came as a curse, but left as a blessing. I remember our love, a dark, twisted love, but the most genuine love I have ever known. Every time the sun sets, I sit by the window, watching the twilight, and feel the peace in my heart. I am no longer afraid. Kalen took away all the darkness, leaving me a light of hope. He came as a curse, but left as a blessing, leaving me a life that no darkness could ever touch. Only the light of peace and an eternal love, deeply etched into every beat of my heart.